What up, guys? Welcome to the Introvert Dating Success Show. I'm your host, as always, Harry Wilmington. And today's show, we're going to be talking about the 5 ways to build confidence with women when you have very little experience. And this is a beginner's guide because obviously some of you that watch this show, you might be hip to being able to do certain things and need help with the more advanced stuff. But this is 101. And I actually am doing this based on a message that I recently read about a guy who I believe is in his late 20s or early 30s. And he's stuck in this mode where he's finally got his life together in terms of his finances, his housing, his job, and stuff like that. But when it comes to really talking to attractive women, he can't get out of his own head and negative headspace about who he is and women finding him less than desirable. And so he wants to know, I've done shows where I talk about, you got to be more confident, this is that. But for guys that are late in the game and haven't had that experience, how do you go about trying to build confidence in an area where you've had very little shots at doing that? And so I wanted to get into that on today's show. As always, guys, these shows are all about you and they're interactive. So I'm going to be talking about this particular subject. If you guys have any questions you want me to answer during the course of the show as it pertains to the topic, definitely leave them in the chat. If you have questions that don't deal with the topic, that's fine as well. I will be happy to answer those questions at the end of the thing I'm going to be talking about, okay? Also, be sure to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and if you like the stuff that you're hearing from this show and think it's been helpful, you can always support the show by leaving a super chat or by leaving a Cash App, the link of which is at the very top pinned in the chat comments, so feel free to do that. Make sure I'm prepared today with a glass of water so I don't have to leave this screen. So I'm going to talk about this guy that left this message. And it's a little lengthy, but I'm going to go through his message and stop and start at some of his points. And then I'm going to get into the meat of how it is that you can start building confidence as a guy if you have not really been around women that much or you're just starting out. All right. So here's this guy's message. He says, I am a 30-year-old guy with a regular job that pays decent money. I recently started living alone and have normal hobbies and friends. I consider myself an extroverted and friendly person. So far, that's actually great. Like, you ideally, before you start dating, not that you can't do this, but the more your life is together before you start dating, then it sets you up to be in an easier position once you do figure out how to do it with women, to be able to make certain moves, whether it's be able to, go pick her up on dates because you have a car, or bring her back to your place for some fun time because you have your own place that doesn't involve roommates or your mom, So having these collective things together, along with money that shows that you can support yourself and potentially a family, is going to be really beneficial to you in your dating life. If you don't have those things, that's not to say you can't start dating, because I've definitely been broke in dating. It just makes it a lot easier, both for you and the women that you're going after. So he says, however, due to a long history of anxiety and depression, I find myself very inexperienced with women. Though I am getting out of it thanks to therapy, I am hookup wise very inexperienced and have only been on a few dates, including one where I recently got ghosted. I am in a rush to meet more people, partly because I want to prove to myself that I can be normal in this regard too. So I'll say this, ultimately, dating is not like a track field sport where you're trying to get to the finish line as fast as possible. And especially on the guy side of things, we don't have too many limitations on ourselves in life. Like, with women, by the time they hit their mid-30s, they're starting to lose some of their eggs. And admittedly, they're not as youthful as their up-and-coming competition. So a lot of times they get looked to the wayside. But with men, we only get better in terms of ideally our socioeconomic status, showing our ability that we can take care of ourselves and have houses and stuff like that, which are all things that a group of women at large find attractive. So you don't have to rush in that sense of things, but I am glad to hear this guy's actually going out there and actively trying to hopefully do things that are going to be able to get him to where he can finally start dating the way he wants to. It's just a few things he's got to fix in order to make that happen, right? So he said, he said he's in therapy. I always recommend, if you recognize that you're at a certain part of your life where for some reason you still can't talk to women, you still get anxious and nervous around them, and you're not able to figure out how to handle that on your own, I always recommend either therapy or coaching. Now, I'm not a therapist, I'm a coach, but the things that I do is teach guys how to get out of their own heads and set forth a plan of action. That way they have a plan going in with women when they're trying to attract them, which I find if you have a plan of action, you can be less nervous because as long as you have a map and blueprint to go by, then you already kind of know steps to take in order to make the moves you got to do to attract women that you want. If you want help with that, you can go to introvertdatingsuccess.com and sign up for one of the coaching programs that we have available, as well as a coaching call. So anyway, this guy says, I want to feel more comfortable leading interactions with women in a romantic way and being able to get contact, but I struggle with the belief that women can be attracted to me. And this is something that I faced in my college years because when I was in my high school days, I just was always called the weird kid, the odd kid, the strange kid. And when I got to college, that's when I was a bit more adult than I was in my teenage years, obviously. And so, but I still had the programming of how people thought about me and perceived me in those years. And that didn't just go away because I switched schools. Like, it's surprising how much of our programming gets ingrained in us as kids that we continue to carry on as adults. So all the stuff about, oh, you're weird, you're strange, you're this odd introvert that nobody's going to like. That stuff, those people are long gone, and those thoughts are still stuck in your head, and that's affecting your life today, including your romantic life. So, him saying that he has a hard time believing that women are going to find him attractive. This is the frame of mind that I was in, where when I was in college, I completely missed out on all the women that actually had crushes on me. And I didn't find out until years later that that was actually the case, because I was so in my head about, oh, I'm so weird, blah, blah, that I would go around women not even trying to do anything. And I didn't know at the time, when you're not trying things is when women think you're being your natural self and they get naturally attracted to you. But then when I would find out that they like me, then I started doing all the things that guys try to do to get women, which is like complimenting them, trying to get them gifts. And now to them, that doesn't seem like I'm being my natural self. And so I'd end up losing those women's attraction. So it's a thing where, like, you have to start to realize as you get older that the way you are at a certain age is different than how you were when you were younger. My aunt always used to say that, well, she's still alive. So she still says that every 7 years we go through a cycle, like our skin completely sheds and we have all new skin. So every 7 years, you're a different person. So for you to think that the way you are at 21 or 28 is the same way that you were at 14 is not good. So this guy's 30. So he's already gone through hypothetically 4 different life cycles, right? So for him to still have the thought process of how people thought about him or how he perceived that people thought about him in his early 20s is causing him to not be able to push forward and have the dating life that he wants. He has to get out of that mindset. Anyway, he says, I have deep-rooted issues from childhood and teenage traumas that still affect me. Again, that whole thing of like going back to our teenage years, even in our 30s. He says, but ultimately, I don't think I'm attractive at all. Well, the nice thing is that it's not to say that women don't have a certain ideal look that a guy should, quote unquote, have, but it differs and varies amongst various women. And the nice thing about being a guy is that you can be average looking to slightly below average and still get women. Now, to be fair, somebody's going to say, but all the handsome chads and blah, blah, this is that. So I'm not denying that dudes that have like the traditionally attractive looks with the chiseled jaw, the square face structure, stuff like that, and then the height and stuff like that, that those guys aren't having an easier time to initially get women. That doesn't mean those guys can necessarily keep women. But if you're a guy that is just average to below average looking, but you have a killer personality, you know how to make her feel, how to listen, and you know how to like take her on adventures and get her out of her comfort zone. And more importantly, you're able to show acceptance of who she is, because that's women's biggest fear, is that she's going to meet a guy and she knows she has all these idiosyncrasies and quirks that she's trying to hide from the world. And she knows at some point, if she lets a guy close enough, he's going to know those things. And that's going to be more important to her, that the guy's not going to judge her than any judgment she's going to put on you. So if you're able to display those kind of things, then yeah, you can be average to below average looking, but what other qualities are you having that are going to stand out more so than just how you look? And women really do look at that, So it's a matter of like really figuring out what those things are. And we'll get more into that when I go into the 5 things that I'm going to talk about later. So anyway, he says, even though I know I'm average looking, I feel like the ugliest person on earth. I find it difficult to break this cycle because of past rejections and seeing women go for people who are very different from me. Now, I believe he's probably right on that. I also believe that he's got blinders on, because I used to do the same thing where I see dudes that I, in my judgment, considered handsomer than me, and I'd see the girls that I wanted get with them. But what started to happen was I opened my blinders a little bit and I started to notice that there were guys that were similar in build and structure as me and had similar humor that I had when I wasn't nervous around people, and they were getting women. So I had to start thinking, why is it that they're able to get women and I'm not, when they're pretty much in so many aspects like me? And that's what I had to really look at. Okay, the only difference is that guy believed he could get her. And I was very much doubtful or thinking another guy's going to come along that's better, or because at the time I was a virgin, that no girl's going to want me because I'm a virgin, even though, again, in hindsight, a lot of girls like me. So it really goes down to your mindset. You are the first person in this whole process that's going to be judging you. And if your judgment of you is you're not worthy of the girls you want, you're going to project that energy out, whether you want to or not. And so you could be thinking, well, girls don't like me, but I'm going to hope some girl's going to come by and see me for who I really am and like me. But you're crushed up like this. You go up to women and you approach them where you're kind of like half-heartedly giving the handshake and looking away from them like you're scared of them. You're giving the energy that says, I don't actually think I deserve you. And so they're going to respond to your energy by saying, you're right, and go to somebody else. And it all starts with the thoughts that you have up here. Continuing. He says, so my question is, how can I be confident in my ability to attract women that I am attracted to? I know this has been asked countless times, but how can I break this cycle and start feeling good in my skin? I understand that this is a process and I'm working on it with my therapist, but any advice or tips would be greatly appreciated. So that's what we're here for today, guys. We're going to here to talk about how you build up your confidence when you, A, have low confidence, B, you've possibly been anxious or had depression, and more importantly, C, you haven't been around enough women to really have the experience that you would need to confidently approach them, talk to them, attract them, etc. Now, in my full program, the Introvert Dating Coaching Academy, we go through this. You get to watch 12 videos that give you the ins and outs of how this works. But beyond that, we do coaching calls whereby I'm able to try to get you out of your psychological funk and really start like pinpointing you towards the things that you're good at, what's so great about you, and how you can harness those things and be able to project them out to women so that way you can, in fact, get the results that you want. Again, you can check out, you can just read about the full program by going to introvertdatingsuccess.com. While you're there, get the PDF freebie, the girlfriend roadmap checklist, which will give you the 10-step points that I talk about how to go about the attraction process. It's very, very helpful. A lot of you guys have been signing up for that, just getting the free PDF. So I appreciate you all for that, but definitely check that out at the website. So let's go ahead and get into what are the 5 ways that you can start building confidence with women when you've had little experience in the dating game. We're going to go through the 5 points bit by bit and then give explanations for each one. All right. So here is the first way to start building confidence. Okay. Is that you need to do what this guy did and build your life up. If you are at a point right now where part of the reason you're not approaching women is because you can, I realistically look at yourself and say, I don't think I have the lifestyle that a woman's going to want. I don't think I have things set up in place now to be able to support a woman. Then you really need to get that situated first for your own ease of mind, because subconsciously, you're always going to be looking at yourself thinking, I know where I am in life right now. And based on where I'm at, this is what I'm determining in terms of whether or not a woman's going to want me. And the more you have stuff together, subconsciously, the more self-confidence you're going to have in being able to approach women. Because think about this, right? Think about, I remember when I used to go to parties, when I first moved to California and I was going to parties and I had no job. Even if I'm at a party, everybody else is talking about, oh, I'm working on this project. Oh, I'm doing this at my job. I just got this raise, this and that. And I'm standing there like, still trying to find my, I didn't want to say to them that I hadn't found my place yet and didn't have money coming in, whatever. So I'd just be there silent. But that put me in a position of like crouching down and being really like, nervous about who I was. And did I want to tell these women that are at these parties that I don't have any kind of prospects going on, because I know they're going to judge me if I say I have no job and I don't have money coming in and I can't figure out how I'm going to support myself or pay my rent this month, And so all that stuff can cause anxiety, can cause depression. It can cause you to be a lesser version of yourself that you're going to project out into the world. So my suggestion is get your money right. Okay. Get your money right. Figure out what you got to do to be able to get that money, whether it's get a full-time job, whether it's invent or create something, but do something that's going to get your money up, not just for women, but for you. Because I'm telling you, when you are able to pay your bills and not have to worry about if you're going to be able to pay the other ones, you're less in your head about how less of a guy you are, because you start realizing, oh, wait, I can pay stuff on time. I can go to a dinner and blow. I went to a dinner last night for a friend of mine who's leaving town, and we went. It was a steakhouse in Beverly Hills, and we did family style meal. Every single person paid $154. 10 years ago, even I'd have been on the looking at the menu like, okay, I'm gonna get like the salad and like maybe one appetizer and just water to drink because I can't contribute more than that. Last night I was just like, okay, here, you need more? Let me know. And just see how that is the action of I don't know if I can pay this or not, cowering versus like, yeah, go ahead, confident, chest up. Like having your money together will definitely start to help you build your confidence because you know you can take care of yourself, which means you can inevitably take care of somebody else. Also, to the point, make sure you are getting your personal goals right. Focus on your goals because when you focus on your goals, in order to attain your goals, you're going to have to experience and do certain skill sets that are going to allow you to be able to negotiate more with people, to be able to work with people in a proper way, to think out strategies to be able to get to the next part of your step of your goal. And all those skills are going to become things that you need to get women. Like, it's kind of like the Karate Kid, Mr. Miyagi, where he's teaching Daniel's son to wax on and wax off. And he's like, why am I doing this? This is some bull crap. And then he gets into the natural fight and he's like, oh, I can now catch the hands because of the wax on, wax off motion. And it's the same thing when you're focusing more so on your goals, you're going to be gaining skill sets that work with women. Perfect example, like being able to listen to the customer or listen to a potential client is a skill that you're going to need when you go on dates, and women are going to want you to listen to them. But you can't develop that muscle to actually be an active listener if you're not going after your goals to be able to have practice at it. Because if you're not around a lot of women, then you got to practice that skill to get good at it. So going after your goals is going to be a great way to do that. And also, while you're in this season of not being with somebody, you should still be creating experiences that give you exposure to new things. You know, in my single time, I was still flying out the country to different countries, different locations, going to Hawaii. I was still doing things in town that were exciting, whether it's going to different concerts or exploring new pathways to go on hikes or, you know, getting into new types of situations in LA. And that allows me to enrich in my experience, which then when I go on dates, I can tell those stories to women, and I have an interesting story. And women are going to look at that like, wow, this guy's, because I've had plenty of women on dates say this, right? I'll say, for example, I went to this concert last week because I just wanted to go. I did a concert. I went to a Dua Lipa concert last year. It was in Denver, and I'm in LA, but I wanted to go to the Denver show because she was going to have Megan Thee Stallion at that show, and she wasn't doing like any other shows. And I bought a ticket and flew out there. That would be an example of that makes a great date story. Like, oh, you just went to a concert just for the heck of it. Like, it shows I had the money to go, which means I can support myself again. It shows that I'm adventurous. I'm going to just go off at a women's notice and say, if I want to do a thing, I'm going to do it. I'm going to plan it out. I'm leading the charge to be able to do the things that I want to do. And also, my life is quite the adventure. Most women, if you talk to them, if they're not with a boyfriend, they are sitting at home missing out on experiences. Like, I've had so many women say, well, I wanted to do this thing, but I didn't want to go by myself. Or I was going to take this trip, but it was a couple's trip with my friends, and I didn't want to like be the only solo person there. So now she's looking at you and you're saying, I'm still doing things and these are my experiences. That makes you a candidate for her that is more lively and interesting than the majority of guys that she's going out with. So as you create new experiences, you'll be able to experience new things. You'll be able to have stories that build up, and that should help you to start building up your confidence, because you're going to be surprised at how many women are impressed by that. And you can be like, oh, great. Now I know what stories to tell to impress women. And if they're impressed, there's a chance they're going to want more dates. And so adding those stories to your repertoire can help you become more confident in the process of meeting these women. So that is the first way to build confidence. Let me take a quick drink here. Like I said, guys, if you guys have any questions you want to ask me, you can feel free to leave them in the chat and we will get to those questions at some point. Delicious. All right. So another great way that you can start building your confidence with women when you've had little experience with them is to start affirming yourself. Now, I know you want a woman to come along and tell you you're the greatest thing in the world. But the problem is, if in your current state, you're constantly telling yourself how crappy of a guy you are, how ugly you are, how no women are going to want you, then you're the first person that's being your coach. If you as your coach are saying you are not worthy of women, then women are not going to come along and try to affirm you. So it starts with you. Now, some of you guys might have gone through some trauma when you were a kid, and maybe you were told by your family or your friend, or not friends, but like colleagues that were around you in school and stuff, that you're ugly, you're weird, you're strange, nobody's going to want you. Why would I date you? Oh, you're disgusting. You might have had women that you tried to ask out in your past, and they were like, oh, why would I date you? How dare you talk to me? I've told the story on here about how the first girl that I liked was when I was 5 years old. And when she found out that I liked her, she laughed at me on the bus, and the whole bus laughed. And that put me on a trauma course for like 10 years. So I get it. But the thing is this, is that you have to understand objectively, the reality of who you are starts with what your perceived reality of you is. So if you're looking at yourself and saying you're ugly, you're not this, and that, then that's what's going to project out into the world. And the world is not going to try to correct you. So initially, early on in the process of trying to affirm yourself, you're going to be telling yourself what's going to feel like lies. And you're going to be doing some exercises that feel awkward and weird because they're not habit yet. But as you do them, you will start to build more confidence. So here's what I recommend, right? First thing is, every time that you think of something negative about yourself, for every one thing, you want to combat that with 5 positive things. For example, let's say you look at yourself and you say, oh my gosh, my eyebrows are too bushy. I have such an ugly face. You got to hear that, recognize you're saying it, and then automatically go into positive. Oh, but you got nice teeth, and oh, the way you dress yourself is really nice, and oh, people think that you're really friendly, and you're really good at like playing Mario. You beat that level with no problem, and you know how to drive across, the city in your car and you hit all the green lights. Like whatever you got to tell yourself, but you got to say 5, even if they're the same things over and over again, but you got to start saying to yourself 5 positive things for every one thing. And what will start to happen is you'll notice that as you're saying these positive things, again, it's going to feel like a lie initially because you're going to say the positive things and then probably say to yourself, but you don't believe any of that. That's a negative thing. You got to go right back to the positive thing because your brain is in the habit now of constantly telling yourself negative things. You know what I did as an interesting exercise? Because I saw this one time where they said, if you just quiet yourself and just don't talk and just sit there and really start to observe how you think about yourself, you'll start to realize, like, legitimately just how negative we actually are to ourselves. Most people are constantly telling themselves all day, like, oh, I made such a stupid move. Or, oh, why did I do that bonehead move? And it's just a habit. We don't recognize that we're doing it. And so you have to start really observing. In order to change the habit, you have to observe that you're saying these things and then change the habit to where every so often you might be like, oh, I said such a stupid thing. You'll be like, yeah, but we all make mistakes. You'll get them on the next one. And that's what you want. You want ultimately the good things you're saying about yourself to overtake how many bad things you're saying about yourself. Because once you start to do that, you'll realistically start to see, like, wait, you know what? I am pretty great. I did do that project really well. The people at work actually do like me and think that I'm pretty cool. And you know what? That girl at that party that I was trying to get with, like, I almost got with her, but we had a really good conversation. I'm actually a better conversationalist than I thought. And you have to build all that up. So that way you'll start to have a more positive thought about who you are. And then you can project that out into the world and have women see it as well. Another way to in terms of affirming yourself is learn to accept others' compliments as truth. I can understand if, like, in your teens or like your early 20s, you were, being called weird, insulting, but there's usually a point in adulthood, like our brains stop forming at 25. Like at that point, our brains are developed enough to start to realize, like, hey, people's feelings are getting hurt when I say certain things or whatever. So you'll start to find after 25 and people start to get usually on average a lot nicer. So what will happen is this, though. You'll say you're 30 now, right? So you're 30 and you're hearing people that are also in their past 25, 35, 45, whatever, trying to compliment you, or you'll have women that are around your age coming up to you and saying you're cute, you're attractive. But again, your mind is still stuck in the time before we were all fully developed, where people were insulting you for no reason or calling you ugly. And now you're like, I don't believe that. Like, that's not a thing. Like, they're just saying I look handsome to be nice, but that's not really a thing. Like, they don't actually believe that. Like, they're just trying to say it to be cute or whatever. Or somebody will say, hey, I'd love to come by and help you with the project. No, they don't want to help me. I should just reject that offer because I'm going to be putting a burden on them. And so now you have to start to also notice all the times that people are legitimately complimenting you and you're turning it down or saying it's not a thing, or you're rolling your eyes like some girl says, oh, you're really cute. And you're like, yeah, right. Like, why is that coming out of your mouth? Because it's a habit again. And part of developing a new habit in terms of, it's not just about what you're saying to yourself, but also what you're accepting as truths when you hear them. You have to start accepting that when people are saying these positive things about you, that they're not bullcrapping you, that they are seeing it in you, even if you're not seeing it in yourself. And sometimes when that happens, you need to take their word for it over yours. Like if some girl comes up to you and says, I think you're actually rather attractive, and you have that feeling of like, I'm about to roll my eyes and say, yeah, right. Or is this ugly mug? What about these eyebrows and blah, 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 that you got to just shut up and just say 2 words. Thank you. Just learn to say thank you to compliments, because if you just start saying thank you, you'll stop the habit of going into the mode where you have to defend why the thing that they just said about you that was nice is not actually a thing, which if you think about it, is a stupid exercise, right? Like somebody's trying to do or say nice things for you or to you, and your response is, that's not a thing. Why are you your own worst enemy? Why are you coming after your own self when they're not the ones doing it? So it's just something to consider, that rather than trying to be defensive, just learn to accept and say thank you for compliments. You ain't got to go into an over explanation of anything. Just focus on just saying thank you, appreciate it, that's awesome, and move on. And let them, because there's the thing too, I found that when you turn down other people's compliments, you're doing a disservice to them, because they're just like, you did a nice thing for them. So their response is to do or say a nice thing to you. And then your response is, I don't want that thing, basically. That nice thing you're trying to give me or say to me, I don't want that. That makes them feel more insulted if you would just said thank you and shut the heck up. All right. So learn to take compliments. And then also, another way you can start affirming yourself is to start highlighting the things that you're really good at, and then recognize that not everyone is good at those things. Because here's what we do. And I used to do this thing too, right? For example, I'm a great artist. You guys have seen my artwork around here. And back in the day, I would draw stuff and people would be like, oh, that's so great. And I'd be like, yeah, but that's not blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's not hard. I just, did a little outline here and yada, yada, yada. And I think my mom had to tell me at some point, like, dude, like just because you think something is easy, you shouldn't be so flippant about it, because not everybody can do the thing that you're doing. Even something like this, like I'm doing a video podcast right now. I've had so many people that have said like, I wish I could start a podcast, blah, 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 blah. And I'm always just thinking to myself, but it's so easy. But is it that easy? Because I had to get the right computer. I had to get the right microphone. I had to get decent sound equipment. I'm still working on getting a slightly better camera, but this is an upgrade from the computer camera that I was using. Like there were steps that went into this. So you have to start recognizing that you have talents in certain things, right? And part of your problem is you're not recognizing how great that you are at those talents, and why it's actually important that you recognize that, because not everybody can do the talents or things that you do. And so that makes you by default a specialized person in certain areas of your life. I don't care if you're the best at Dungeons and Dragons, or if you're the best at Nintendo, or you're the best at like cooking up a hot meal or whatever. Like you have something or several things that you are great at. So start recognizing that you're great at those things and praise yourself for those things, so you can start further building up your inner confidence about, yeah, you have a certain skill set that people actually admire and that you should admire too. And that includes women out there that are going to be looking at you. This also helps with, if you start affirming yourself in the things that you're good at, then when you go on dates, you won't be scared to highlight to women, these are some things that I'm great at and that I do, and that, yeah, I'm the bomb at this thing. Because women like to see a little cockiness, and especially they like to see a guy that's confident in being able to talk about and do the things that he claims he knows how to do. All right. So just a thing to consider. And then the last little bonus thing for affirming yourself during the season when you're trying to become more affirming of yourself and who you are, really try to avoid negative people or those who put you down, because they will get into your head. I don't care if they're close family members or close friends of yours that like to give you little jabs or jokies or whatever like that. This is a season where you're trying to become your most positive self and have positive thoughts, and people that are bringing negativity into your space will affect you. So you can tell them in advance, like say somebody makes a negative joke about you, you could say, hey, dude, like, I know you're joking, but I'm trying to become a more positive person. And so I'd appreciate you not joking like that, because I love the way you're funny. I love the way you joke, but I don't like when it's at my expense. So I'm trying to be more positive, uplifting. And people that are your true ride or dies or friends might just be like, hey, I didn't know, my bad. Can totally do it. The ones that aren't able to do that, get rid of them, because they're only going to bring more of your downfall and make you feel even more sucky about yourself in the long run. All right. So that's the second thing. Now, before I get into the next point, somebody left a comment in the comment section. And by the way, guys, like I said, this show is ultimately about you. So if you have, this is a free session. If you guys have any questions you want to ask me during the process of this show, leave it in the chat and I will be happy to answer it at some point during the show. So this guy just said, been watching your channel a lot lately. The all about her pull away test videos are helpful. Thank you. Well, I appreciate that. I really like this is me saying thank you to a compliment, right? So thank you. I appreciate that you like the pull away test videos. They tend to be the most popular videos on this channel. So I tend to put some out every 10 days or so, just to remind people of, like, because there's various aspects of how the pull away test works, both for men and for women. And I've also had a lot of guys that have said things like, well, you know, if she's pulling away and she's playing games, I want a woman that's more self-assured. And I keep trying to press this idea that, yes, while there are some women that are quote unquote playing games by doing this whole push and pull thing, a lot of the time, women that actually like you are pulling away because you're doing the wrong stuff. Like I remember this woman back in the day, perfect example, woman I liked back in the day. And it was, I was in college, and I met her. It was a friend's cousin of mine. We were laughing, joking, having a good time. And by the end of that night, I was just on all cylinders. Like there had been a girl I liked at my school that had been wishy-washy on me already. And then my friend brings her cousin into town, and we're just like vibing the whole time. And I got her number, and she said, hey, if you're ever back in your city, the city that I'm in, because she was going to school in my hometown. So she said, if you're ever back in your hometown, I'd love to go out. It's like, great, fantastic. Fast forward to the next week, there's a movie screening going on in the town. I got a free ticket for. So I said, hey, I'm going to be in town. If you can go, this and that, right? But anyway, so to the point. So long story short, because I've told this story before, we go to the movie, have a good time. At the end of the movie, I'm dropping her off at her dorm room, and she invites me to come into her dorm room. And I talk about this story extensively in my No Girls For You book, which you should get at the website. But anyway, yeah, go up to her room, sit on the bed. I'm still a virgin, so I'm looking around like, what are we supposed to do in here? This big freaking bed's in the way. And I left. So that wasn't what made her pull away, though, because she still liked me. What happened was this. At the time, this is going to sound really stupid, right? I was so worried that I was not a memorable enough guy for women to remember my name, that every time I would call this girl, I'd say, hey, so-and-so, it's Harry, so-and-so's cousin, so-and-so's friend, because I was talking. So basically, I'll call and say, like, hey, I'm your cousin's friend, remember me. So be like, hey, I'm Harry, your cousin's friend. And she'd be like, yeah, I know. Okay, great. So then keep in mind, I take her out on a date, show her a good time, almost get to sleep with her, but I don't, and I go home. Next time I call her, hey, so-and-so, it's Harry, so-and-so's friend. And I did it like 4 or 5 times. By the fifth time that I was doing that, she was like no longer trying to go out with me. And so somebody would look at that and say, oh, she just couldn't make up her mind and blah, 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 blah. And she's just playing games. It's like, no, I was doing an annoying thing. I called her, and every time I called her, I acted like she was like Drew Barrymore's character from 50 First Dates, as if she'd have no memory of who I was or what my name was. And I'd reiterate it every time. And that got freaking annoying to where she said, I'm out. This dude's crazy. And I totally get it. That was all on me. So I just want guys to take some self-responsibility and some introspection, that not every woman that pulls away is trying to play a game or like is ghosting you to hurt your feelings. Sometimes you are legitimately doing stuff that if you're not observant of it, you're going to keep doing and continue to have women ghost you for it. So that's why I keep making those videos, because new guys come to my channel and they're not understanding the whole pull away thing. And admittedly, they get a lot of views and I'm monetized. So, but I'm glad that it's actually working out for you. I'm glad you're able to watch those and learn some lessons for them, because that's ultimately my goal for this channel beyond all the other stuff. All right. So appreciate that. All right. So now let's get into the third reason. Oh, let's backtrack. Let's get into the third way that you can start building confidence with women when you have little experience. All right. Very, very important. Be around more women. All right. Now I'm going to give a parallel analogy. Out here in Hollywood, I've been here for 14 years now doing a variety of video stuff. But I haven't been doing this show. I've done other various YouTube projects. I've also worked at a comedy club, and I've worked at a local newspaper, which I got last year. Now, what's interesting is this whole time, there's a part of me that's been wanting to like start a video business and do it for other people, but I wasn't getting those opportunities. And then this past year, I started working at a local newspaper, whereby they get invitations to various events, and me being on the production side, I get to go film some of these things. Well, it turns out that if you go to these events and you film them and celebrities are there, and then you go back to the office you work at and you edit the piece together and then you put it up on the website, the place that I works at sends that out to the people that we did the story on or whatever. And then they share, and they do one or two things. One, they share it with other people. And then two, they ask, hey, who's the camera guy that filmed this / edited it? And just in this past week alone, because I don't like to come on here and like talk about stuff I do outside of this stuff, but the number of high profile events that I filmed just in this last week alone, let alone just the month of March, because this is like award season out here, right? It has been astronomical, on top of the number of contacts I've made that want to now hire me for other things is astronomical. But how did that happen? And why is it that that's happening now within this last 10 months to a year? Whereas I've been here 14 years and it wasn't really popping like that, because I'm now regularly around areas and people whereby they can actually see that I'm out there. I'm able to demonstrate my product, i.e. my filming stuff, my editing stuff. And they're like, oh, he does a great job. Let's hire him and pay him the rates that he wants, because I'm in the environment. And so this parallels back to women, because a lot of the time, like this guy said in this thing, he didn't really like get around a whole lot of women like that. So yeah, you can't become confident around people that you're never around. And if you're not allowing yourself to get around other women, then you're not going to be able to learn how to talk to them, what they're actually into, the experiences that they're looking for, what they actually want in a guy versus what you think women should want in a guy based on, YouTube rabbit holes. Like the best teacher of all that stuff outside of yours truly is going out into the world and actually meeting women. Now, as an introvert, I understand that could be a situation, because you're like, Harry, I want to stay home. I want a woman to come up to my door and knock on it and say, hey, I think I'm the one for you, because going out there is scary and I don't want to have to do cold approaches and do all these things in bars and clubs. But not to worry, because there's other ways that you can be around more women. To start off with, regardless of what job you're doing, most jobs or entities at some point have some kind of networking event, and also hobbies too. Like think about like your Comic-Cons or, other various things where there's, Lord of the Rings meetups, and there's all these things where like you can meet up with other people. So networking events, taking classes. If you have certain hobbies that are popular, like I said, all the paintings that you see around my apartment, like the one that's over there, I did that at a paint night. I got news for you. At paint nights, it's more women than men. Like there's plenty of single women that go to paint nights because they want to get out of the house and they want to not be moping in their own sorrow. And also they're hoping maybe I'll see a guy there, and they're usually disappointed because they don't. But then if you're the guy that's there, now you have a common interest. Oh crap, you paint too? Hey, let me check on your painting. How do you think my painting looks? Like that's an easy way to get around women, where you're being able to use the environment and the activity going on to segue into a natural conversation, which can lead to exchanging information, So you got to put yourself in those environments. So yeah, I found networking events, classes, and hobbies of those things are really easy ways to get around more women. Another way is to, some of you guys are going to like this, is to get on dating apps. Now, obviously, if you're not great at the whole dating app thing, a lot of that boils down to your bio sucking, your picture sucking, and you're not knowing how to communicate. Again, I got programs for this kind of stuff at the website. You can go to introvertdatingsuccess.com and click on the products tab. But regardless, is assuming once you figure that out, being able to swipe on a bunch of women and be able to get a few women into a conversation is a great way to start building confidence, because I found that a lot of the openers and then eventually closers that I would use on dating apps would be the same things that I could use in real life to get women. So I use dating apps more as a virtual simulator. Like I get to virtually try to work conversations and see, what openers got a good response, which ones didn't, what conversation topics allowed us to go further with conversations versus some that caused the conversation to die altogether. And it's a safer environment because the woman's not directly in front of you. So there's not too much of a hit back if you feel a rejection. It's like, oh, she ghosted. Oh, she unmatched me. Oh, that sucks. Okay, well, on to the next simulation. So I found it was easier for me to do it like that, right? Another thing, you need to start going to places where women have to talk to you. I looked back in my video archive. I did a video about the number one spot to be able to go to practice talking to women, and it was department stores. Like in department stores, women, they have all kinds of women there, and if you want to find something, you can talk to them and they have to talk back. So I shot an event the other night, and I got to the event and I had no memory cards. Like I left all my memory cards at home. So I had to go to Target twice because I didn't have a memory card and I didn't have like light batteries. So I had to go. And both times I went to the store, there was this lady there, again, just average looking lady, but like, I had to reach out to her and say, hey, can you open up this case to be able to get out this light and be able to get out a memory card for me? And both times it wasn't just like I went up there and said, hey, I need your help to like get a memory card. I was like legitimately having a conversation. Hey, I need this memory card. Oh, hey, how long have you worked here? Hey, so tell me like, what do you like working here? Like, oh my God, I'm back again, excited to get something else. Oh, it's been a crazy night so far. How's your night been going? Like, you're just having people conversations with people that just happen to have boobs and nice hair. But when you go to department stores, you can really start to practice this and start to realize that just because the approach game habit is also important to get. Like, some of you all have a problem just walking up to women and starting to talk, which is fine because I was never the best guy at cold approach, but I found that as I was practicing in like department stores or other various areas, that when we would have parties at my place back in the day, and there are women there that I didn't know, I could at least approach them and say, hey, what's up? Are you having a good time at my apartment? Ha ha ha! At my party, like it. So you want to run simulations. So department stores are great for that. Honestly, strip clubs, you got to pay for it, but you can literally go to a strip club and pay a stripper like $20 and you could get the dance. You could legitimately get the dance, but you could also just say, hey, I just want to talk to somebody for 20 minutes. And plenty of strippers out there will be like, yeah, I've heard so many stories of strippers saying like, dude came to the thing, just wanted to talk to somebody. So he'd pay me like 20, $40 and we just talk for like 5 or 10 minutes. But like in the strip clubs, ideally, it's like some of the hottest chicks out there. Your fear right now is you can't approach hot chicks, right? Fine. Go to a strip club, pay a chick that has to talk to you that's really, really hot, and you'll start to see that because she'll start asking you questions and they have to listen to you. So you can talk about whatever. They got to sit there and listen. But realistically, you'll start to be able to get a vibe for like, oh, approaching hot women isn't that bad of a thing. And by the way, sidebar, I've actually gone to strip clubs where like they weren't currently on the clock or it was like a low time in the day where they'll just come over to you and just start talking. I remember when I was in Atlanta, I felt bad because me and my friend went to the strip club and this girl, like she was dancing on the pole. Then she came down to the bar and we're just sitting there talking. And we talked for like 10 minutes. And again, inexperienced me, midway through that, like after 10 minutes, I was like, oh, hey, can I like pay you for a dance real quick? And she actually looked disappointed. Like she looked disappointed that I was going to now pay her to do some physical stuff with me versus just have a nice conversation. And at that point I was like, oh, so maybe we aren't always about the money. Oh my God. But the point is this, is that 10 minutes of free conversation. And I got to just kind of talk and chat and hear about her life and what she was trying to do outside of the strip club. Because I'm thinking, I'm not getting with the stripper, right? So I already know going in to talk to this woman, I'm not trying to land her, but I want to make it an interesting conversation. So you'll be able to start practicing having interesting conversations with a woman that's hot that you think you have no chance with, but that'll help you for when you're in the real world and you meet a hot woman that you potentially do have a chance with, okay? So those are just a few examples of ideas where you can go talk to women to get practice, all right? Also to the point, make sure you have close friends, bring you around more women. If you're an introvert like I was, you probably have friends that are going to invite you to parties or dinners or whatever, and they're going to know some of the women in these areas where they're taking you that you don't know, all right? Have them do the introduction. Because I know, again, approaching can be hard, but you can have your friend be like, hey, so-and-so, this is Harry, this is so-and-so, like, and then they can big you up. Oh yeah, Harry's into this and that, and she's into this and that. Boom, go talk. Now your friends helped you introduce a topic of conversation that you two can converse on, and it'll make you less nervous about having to think up some random idea in your head of what to talk about. But also, you want to be practicing your talking skills and practicing talking about things that women are interested in. Again, if you need help with that, go to introvertdatingsuccess.com and sign up for a one-on-one coaching call. We can talk about that, all right? Lastly, very, very important, okay? Because you want to be around more women, all right? And part of that is because you need to start racking up as many rejections as possible. Let me say that again, right? Right now, you have a fear of rejection because when it's not happening, the thought is if you get rejected, it's going to hurt a lot more based on how you're judging it in your head than it's going to actually hurt. Like a woman saying, no, thanks, I'm not interested. That idea for a guy is like a gut punch because it brings about rejection. It brings about like being humiliated. It brings about the idea that you're not desired by women. And I get all that, right? But you only need hypothetically one woman that likes you enough to want to date you, sleep with you, whatever, right? So rather than being afraid, you need to say, hey, I need to get around as many women as possible so I can start knocking down the list of rejections to eventually find that one. If you ask out 20 women, inevitably at least one of those women is going to say yes. Like those are typically the odds I find, like usually more often than not, if you ask out 20 to 30 women, you're going to probably get at least one person to say yes. But if you're only around like 3 women and all 3 reject you, yeah, you're going to feel kind of bad because you're like, oh, all the girls always reject me. 3 girls rejected you. You have not asked out enough women. And I know people don't like to always hear that dating is a numbers game. I don't think that's effectively always true. I think that as you develop your skill, then better increase you can better increase your odds of being able to ask a woman out and know that when you ask her out, you're going to get a yes. But for you guys that are just starting out, that are beginners, you need to be not afraid of rejection, because you'll start to take rejection less personally. And then you'll have the confidence to know that you're still a great guy, even if the next 3 women you ask out say no, because they're not trying to insult you. You never know a reason behind why it is a woman's actually saying no. Like, I've told stories on here about women that said no to me that I found out later ended up being lesbians, and they were just going through their own journey. But I was taking it personal back then. So you have to be able to ask out enough women to start to get an idea of like, oh, for one, you'll find out your rhythm of like how you best interact with women. You'll learn how to best approach them, how to best ask them for their phone numbers, and what processes that are going to feel most natural to you to be able to try to ask them out. But you can't get to any of those steps if you're not around enough women for that to happen. And in order to do that, part of you has to stop being afraid of rejection. So I make it a game of, instead of hiding from rejection, I'm going to run headfirst into it. I'm going to go ask out women, and I'm going to try different ways to ask them out. I'm going to try some silly stuff, some serious stuff. And hopefully in the midst of doing all this, I'll get one to say yes. But I'm fully expecting the next 5 women I ask out are going to say no. Let's go have fun with getting those no's. And I find doing that, you actually might get some yeses that you didn't expect. All right. So that's the third thing. Here we go. As I say, always, guys, this show's about you. So if you have any questions you want to ask me in the chat, feel free to do that, and I'll be happy to answer it after this next break. So let's get into this. All right. So here is the 4th way to start building confidence with women when you have little experience: is you need to study. And you need to study specifically indicators of interest. For those of you that do not know what that is, an indicator of interest is a signal that a woman will oftentimes give that is a tell that she's starting to build interest. Most guys, if they're in their head or have a history of not being great with women, like I did back in my 20s, you start to ignore and not even see signals that women are actually throwing at you, that if you were able to better pay attention, you'd recognize that they're interested. All right. I'll give you an example. Like in my days now, right, when I'm talking to women, where I'm at my job, or I'm just out and about, or I'm going to a lot of events these days, so I see women, I can tell like a turn in their face, like the way they're looking at me and the way that their face is positioned. If there's a point in the conversation where if she's feeling me, her face changes to that face of like, I'm listening to you, to like, oh crap, I'm interested in you, to, hey, I think that this guy's interesting. Okay. I'll give you an example, right? So I filmed an event recently. And again, I filmed an event recently, and at the end of the event, I had to get testimonials from people, right? So this one woman comes out and she gives me a testimony about the great time that she had at this event, right? And so we filmed the thing. I'm like, okay, great. And then I'm still staying there because I'm waiting for other people to come out to be able to give me testimonials. And so she comes over and steps right here, because I think she was trying to cool off from like, it was quite the workout. It was a workout thing. So she was still trying to, wipe down and cool off for like that. And so I'm sitting there, we just start talking banter. And then I don't know, at some point in the conversation, like she mentioned like the job that she did. And I mentioned that, I'm out here also doing my thing, filming stuff or whatever. And then like, sure enough, I saw the face change. I was like, huh. And it's that change where it's like, if I wanted to take this further, I know she'd be down for it. If I wanted to ask for her number, if I wanted to ask her on a date, if I wanted to try to say, hey, what are you doing later on tonight? I'd like to meet up with you, whatever like that. This would be that moment. And then here's another thing, right? Actions. So then I just mentioned, man, like that was such a workout, because I was filming it, but also working out as part of this thing. I was like, man, I wish I had brought some water, because like I drank a bunch of water before I got there, but stupidly, I didn't think to bring a water bottle. So whatever. Now, the place we're at has water bottles inside the building. I could go in there right now and buy a bottle of water. But what happened instead? This woman goes, hey, you know what? I happen to bring 2 bottles of water. I can walk all the way back to my car and get that bottle and then bring it back if you'd like. And I was like, sure, if you want to, totally fine. And this woman walked all the way back to her car and came back and gave me a bottle of water. Now, again, 41, I recognize all these actions indicate, oh, she's interested. Like, even if it's like, it ain't got to be like, I got to know she's head over heels, this and that. Just those small actions that she did, because I'm recognizing she was about to leave. So the fact that she walked to her car, came back, gave me a bottle of water, stood there for a little bit, and then walked back to her car, that was like the next move is mine to make. Am I going to try to say, appreciate the water? Let me get your number, yada, yada, yada. So again, but this goes back to, I recognized all the things she was doing that were indicators that she was potentially interested in me. Now, it doesn't have to be at a high level. Like, we're not trying to say that she's fallen in love, but it's like you want to look at those early signs, which should say to you, this woman is giving you an opening to explore a connection further. All right. And if you're not aware of something simple as like, oh, like, because there are plenty of guys that write me say like, oh yeah, well, she, did this thing, or I can't tell if she likes me, but she made me this meal the other night, and it was just like, I had a really good time cooking that meal, and then just kind of stood there, and I didn't do anything. So then she left. And I'm like, dude, that was a sign. She brought resources that you didn't pay for. She made you a dynamite meal, let you keep the leftovers, and then like stood there all googly-eyed. These are all signs. But if you aren't aware of what those signs even are, then you're going to walk out in this world and just think that women just don't like you, which is going to kill your confidence because you're not observing, oh, wait, women are doing or saying certain things or having body motions that really do indicate that if given the chance, she'd be open to exploring a further connection. And that's all you're looking for. All an indicator of interest is a woman saying, I'm available to explore this connection further to see where it goes, right? So what you need to be doing as a guy is to start studying up on actions that women do that will give them away. I'm telling you, because this thing is that when a woman is starting to build attraction for you or is trying to put out there that she's interested enough to be able to explore a connection, there is nothing about her, for the most part, for normal, sane women that have a good head on their shoulders and are like, sexually active and want to like do stuff, they cannot help but do those actions. It's involuntary. If you're sitting there and you're talking to a woman, I'm gonna slow down now. And you're talking to her in that voice. It's like, hey, what's going on, Miles? This, and that. And she moves her fingers back like this and moves the hair. She didn't try to plan that out. She wasn't like, okay, he's talking in a low, smooth voice, so I'm not going to like move my hair back, which indicates that I like him. No, this is all involuntary, natural movements that they just feel when they're interested. So if you know what that looks like, then you'll recognize that women are regularly probably doing stuff around you that would give them away if only you knew what those are. And you need to know them because then it takes the guesswork away. And when there's less guesswork for you, you're going to start to realize, oh crap, like women actually like me. And here's the thing too, nothing about dating, honestly, should be a surprise to you. Nothing about the way in which women move should be a surprise to you. You should be able to take all the guesswork altogether outside of women, because when you know how they function, if you know why they think about things, the way that they think about things, then you'll start to observe things about them that's giving them away. And that'll make you realize, oh crap, women like me. And that in itself will build confidence. Like you're in a group of women and you see them all staring at you a certain way, moving their hair back a certain way, or, doing a gentle touch around you a certain way, or trying to give you an extra long hug a certain way. Or, they're saying things you like, I hope I see you later. Like, these are all things that if you are observant and you know them, you'll be real confident real quick, because you'll start to realize women around me are showing me signals that they like me. I just got to know if I want to pull the trigger or not. All right. And what you'll find is that many women that you didn't think were interested in you actually are, based on their movements. So some of you right now have a female friend that would legitimately date you and is actually actively showing you subtle signs that she's hoping you're going to get. Because again, women are typically subtle and passive. So they don't do like the biggest things in the world, like, hey, I like you, come sleep with me. But they're giving you these subtle signs that indicate that they just want a shot. And because women get afraid too. I know as men, we get worried about, we're in the friend zone. We don't want to ruin things. What if she doesn't like us? Well, women have those thoughts too about you, about like, we've been friends for so long. And I know I wasn't trying to date him initially, but I realized I really, really like him. And now I don't know, what to do, what to say. And even with those women, they're still giving these subtle hints that they hope you're going to catch on to. All right. So as you learn indicators of interest, it'll become easier to recognize when women like you. You'll start to see how many women actually would be open to you asking them out, and that'll help to build your confidence. So learn those indicators of interest. Okay. All right. Last point, because I'm running out of water, and we'll be done. So here is the fifth And there's plenty more signs, by the way, guys, that you can use to start building up confidence. But I like to keep my list succinct because for you new guys that are just starting out, I don't want to overwhelm you with things. Even with this list, start focusing on like one or two things at a time, and then as you build those things up, you'll get more things, right? Which actually leads to the fifth point. So here is the fifth way to build confidence with women when you have little experience: is to focus on small step-by-step victories. All right. Now, in my full coaching program, the Introvert Dating Success Coaching Academy, you can watch the 12 video program that I have that walks you through the basic pillars of like how to approach, how to ask for the number, how to get on a date, what to do on that first date, what to do on the second date, what to do between dates, what kind of conversations to be having, how you progress the relationship. But I don't want to overwhelm you. I don't want you looking at the finish line. All right. I want you to start looking at what steps can you do today to start building your confidence. So that way, by default of that, you'll get better at the dating process. Because here's the thing: if you've never slept with a woman, for example, like this guy said he was hookup wise, very inexperienced. So I don't want to give you the lesson of like, hey, here's what you do to get her in bed, because you need to make sure you have other small victories ahead of that. Because if you don't, you're going to try to go up to a woman and be like, hey, so I want to sleep with you. And she's going to be like, I don't want to do that. And you're going to be like, oh my God, I failed. We need you to have small victories that are going to allow you to build your confidence and lead up to bigger victories. All right. So this is why, like, for example, in my coaching program, the first lesson is on mindset, is being able to do things like talk more positively to yourself and start rethinking the way that you think about dating. All right. So once you're able to get to a positive mindset, the next step might be, for example, going to a party and being able to approach a woman and talk to her. That's it. You're not trying to get to the big end goal of a relationship or a hookup. You're doing one step at a time. If you have not been well practiced in being able to just approach a woman without being nervous and say hi to her, or to start some kind of conversation, or to make a joke with her that's going to make her want to open up, then work on that step. Work on going out with your friends, going to a party, going on an online dating site, and connecting with one woman, approaching and having a conversation. And from there, you can start working on your conversation skills. You can start really figuring out what women like to talk about. And then from there, once you feel like you're sufficient enough in that skill to where you can go to a party, like I used to go, as I started doing this kind of stuff, I'd go to parties and be like, as soon as I find the girl I want to talk to, it's on a popping. And I'd be like, oh, her right there. And I go over and I already knew I had the confidence to approach that woman and talk to her. Great. Then the next step is, okay, so now you're going to add an extra step on of being able to ask her for her number. Ooh, and that can be scary because, again, if you haven't had a lot of experience with approaching women, you're going from now approaching them and feeling good about that to like the next bolder step, which gives indications of wanting to see this woman beyond just this conversation, which is being able to ask for the information. Now, again, in my program, I talk about what you can do to actually make that happen in a way where most women are going to say yes to you when you ask them for their information. But to the point is that, yeah, you want to make sure that you're able to get that step. Then once you're able to get that step, then the next step is, okay, you know how to approach women now. You know how to ask them out. Now, you know how to get to their contact information. Now, you want to actually figure out how to ask them on a date. Again, in my program, I have a whole step-by-step sequence of how to do that in a way that you're not manipulating her to go on a date. You're actually just having a conversation, but in that conversation, you're able to set up parameters that are going to allow her to say yes to a date. All right. And then so forth and so on. So each victory in the process will allow you to, it'll show you that you've gotten that step correct. And also, as you do more steps correctly, even if, say, you do a step with one woman, like you're approaching a woman, you start talking to her, and then she's like, this conversation is boring, I'm going away. Well, fine. But at the point that you get that right, let's say you get the conversation step right, and then your next step is asking for a number. And the first time you do it, you mess up. Well, at least you are able to start a conversation. So that victory is still going to always be there, right? So you just know, okay, it just means I have more stuff to work on for this particular step, but I'll keep working on it until I get it right. Then you get that step right. It's like, great. Now you try to ask out a girl on a date and she's like, this just felt weird. I don't want to go out anymore. But okay, now you know you got that step to work on. But it's working on individual steps that's going to lead you to where you can now approach a woman, talk to her, ask for information, and then have her say yes to a date. That's 4 steps. So now by practicing, you've now gone through 4 steps, whereas beforehand, you couldn't do any of those steps. All right. And as you get success with each step of the process, you'll start to feel more confident that you're going to eventually build to being able to go on a first date. Like for me, the big victory for me was like, I could actually get women to a first date. Now, I couldn't always keep them beyond that first date, but just the fact that I was having a shot at being able to get on more first dates back in the day was a huge victory for me, because when I first moved here, I wouldn't get any dates. So to go from no dates to like, I can at least get that first date. And now I can get a second date. And now I can get that second date and a kiss. And now I can get that second date, a kiss, a third date, and a potential hookup. It just all built to where at some point it became realistic where I could go on a first date with somebody and get the first date, the first kiss on that date, and a hookup on that date. But that takes time to build up to if you haven't had the confidence to do so. So I want you to start focusing on the smaller things in the process of going from meeting a woman to attracting her to dating her to eventually landing her as the girlfriend. That way, as you get these victories, because subconsciously these victories are important. These victories are telling your brain, hey, I can actually be successful with women at these various parts of the process. And you need that to be able to build your confidence more, which also goes to early on. Like I said, if you're not in a circle where you're meeting enough women, you're not going to be able to do that. But once you are, then don't be afraid of rejection. Don't be afraid that you're going to get it wrong, because here's the big thing, right? Is that ultimately in the process of dating, you're going to get some things wrong, and that's perfectly fine. That's why I say you need to run into rejection, because you need to get through all the rejections to build up your muscles for asking these women out, build up your tolerance for taking rejection, and eventually be that no fear guy that women are going to see as though it'd be like, oh crap, he has no fear. Like he just boldly walked up to me and just asked me out. You know what? I'm going to say yes. And that's really what you want at the end of all this. All right. So that's it for my little rant on how to build up your confidence with women. Just to briefly, 1, you want to build your life up. 2, you want to start affirming yourself. Number 3, you need to get yourself around more women. I cannot stress this enough, especially if you're introverted guys, like find a way to meet more women. It might be tiresome, but if you're seeing no women now, try to start by seeing like a woman a week. It's a great way to start getting more practice with women. Number 4, learn indicators of interest that women show to show that they're interested in you. And number 5, start focusing on small step-by-step victories. Doing these things will get you on a pathway where you're a lot more successful with women than you could possibly imagine. All right. So now that I'm done with that part of the show, before I head out of here, again, I'm here for you guys. So if you have any questions you want to ask me, guys, when I was starting my dating journey, it was so invaluable to me that I was going out researching things. And not only that, I would like call into certain shows I was a fan of to ask dating questions, because I'm like, this person's here for free. Give me all this knowledge that he has. Like, I can't turn that down. So I'm here for you guys. So if you have questions you want to ask me, now's the time. We have a question in the chat. So let me read what it is real quick. Okay, let's see. He says, okay. So this guy has a question, or I guess a comment. He says, one of the main issues I've had has been that most of the places I go to, there are a higher majority of couples and groups of women. Single women are rare. A group just heightens the anxiety. Well, again, I'm an introvert also. I'm not saying that you have to, like, I suggested a lot of places and things you could do, right? But you have to know yourself. You have to know the amount of energy in the room that you're able to take realistically. And then from there, figure out how you can make that work. Because here's the thing, you can have all the excuses in the world. They're not going to help you meet women. So yeah, you could have anxiety around a lot of women. Fine. Be in a group where there's a shorter amount of women. Either way, you got to figure it out. Right. But I have found that, because again, like this past weekend, I went to it was a women's event that I was filming at. Right. And I'm always observant. So there are women in the room, they're boss babes, and they're making $100,000, $200,000 a year and all this other stuff. And I'm looking around and I'm always looking at hands. I'm always looking at women's hands, right? And I'd say about half the women there were still single and had nobody. And so that's an example of, like, in that environment, it's not hard to think of a thing to talk about. So I'm at a women's event, right? It's a women's award show. So I could hypothetically go up to a woman that I see that has no ring on and be like, hey, so are you here for one of the nominees, or do you know somebody that's personally here to win an award? Like what's your story? Why are you here? This is a natural conversation between just me and that one person. There were vendors at the event. I can go up to a female vendor, no ring on her hand, relatively around my age or so, and be like, hey, so tell me about some of the stuff that you're selling here. Like, oh, that looks really interesting. Like, how'd you get into this business? Oh man, that's great. You must have really felt proud when you got your first sale. Like, tell me what that was like. Natural conversation, and it's just me and her. It's not any other people but me and this vendor person right here. So I'm saying there are places you can go to where even there's a lot of people, ultimately you having a conversation with that one person is just you one-on-one with that person. Like, that's it. And there's a bunch of environments. The paint nights that I go to, those usually no more than like 15 people max. And like I said, I've seen a lot of single women at these paint nights. But you can realistically look up places where on average there's going to be more single women. You can go to like singles. They're literally, most cities have singles mixers. Like I know I'm in LA, so I'm in a more populated city, but like LA regularly has singles mixers that happen every week. If you don't want to do singles mixers, fine. Again, like I mentioned, you can have certain hobbies. I had a friend of mine who she did kickball. She was in an adult kickball league, and a lot of people on that thing were single, and it was like mostly women on that too. So there are women that are already out there that are trying to get out and do activities in the hopes of finding men, because they don't want to, they recognize they can't sit at home and meet a guy. So they're trying to get out there and actively do stuff. And then you have men at home like, I don't want to do that, because if I go out, like, I mean, how do I know if she has somebody or not? Or every time I go out, there's going to be couples there, and I'm going to be the dude that's out of it. And everywhere you go, regardless of what the activity is, I can guarantee there's going to be at minimum 1 to 2 single women there. If not, then again, reassess the places you're going to and start looking at what places can you go to where there's admittedly a bit more of the single crowd. Again, it ain't got to be hugely populated, but also recognize that when it's you and a woman one-on-one in intimate moments, it doesn't really matter who else is there. Like there were hundreds of people at this event that I went to, but when I'm talking to a vendor solo, when I'm going to a table to film something and there's a woman by herself sitting there and I can just start a conversation with her, that is a one-on-one interaction. That is nobody else but you two there. All right. But you can't make excuses if you're wanting to meet people. If you don't want to meet people, then you continue to say, well, but there's other couples there, blah, 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 because, and let's say hypothetically there are, right? All couples have that one friend that they know that's single that they wish would get with somebody if only they could hang out. In my circle here, I know I have a bunch of my friends have people that are in their lives, whether they're, husband and wife, whether they're long-term partnerships or whatever like that. And they'll be trying to plan like couples vacations. And they got that one friend that they really wish they could invite, but you know what? They can't invite her because she is not in a relationship. So now you go to an event and let's say there's no other couples there. Let's say there's no single people there, right? But you're going to the event and they meet you and you kind of, obviously you want to talk to the husband first. You want to create a banter with him. And then he'd be like, that's real nice, dude. Hey, this is my wife, so-and-so, blah, 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 blah. Oh, and her wife's like, oh my God, I have a girlfriend that would be perfect for you. So now, even if you go into those events where it's mostly couples, you now have met some people that are allies in you getting a girl. So it's a win-win either way is what I say, So hopefully that helps you answer your question. If there's no other questions in the chat, guys, then I want to say thank you for watching this particular episode. I'm going to be going out of town for the next 10 days. I'm going to Virginia to visit my mom and do some other things. So I'll be back at some point near the end of next week. So I'll be chopping this video up and putting it, video highlights and stuff like that on the channel. But in the meantime, guys, as always, if you have any questions you want me to answer on one of these shows in the future, leave it in the chat or in the comment section below. You can also write to me by going to the website and clicking on the contact tab and sending me a message there as well. All right. So thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Definitely give me some likes on this video because it helps me get found in the algorithm apparently. And yeah, that's all I got for you guys. I am Harry Wilmington and I will catch you guys on the next episode. I am out. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Introvert Dating Success Podcast. Visit us at introvertdatingsuccess.com for more great tips on attracting women using your natural introvert charm. Oh, yeah.